All right, guys, so we just finished up the phylum, and so now we're going to take those phylums and we're going to sort them into smaller groups called classes. So in the phylum, or not, Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, then we take our classes and we sort classes out by body covering, reproductive system, and how the animal regulates their temperature. So there are a few examples for you. There are many, 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 many classes. These are just 4 examples that you may be familiar with, maybe one that you're not. The first one is Mammalia. Body covering for mammalias, they have hair. Reproductive system, they give birth to live young and they nurse their young. Temperature regulation, they are endothermic, so their bodies make their own heat through their metabolism. Next up, we have aves, which is our birds. Their body covering is that they have feathers. Their reproductive system is that they lay eggs with hard shells, and their temperature regulation is that they are also endothermic, so their body heats through metabolism. Next, we have reptilia. Body covering on reptilia is scales. Reproductive system, they lay eggs with soft shells, and their temperature regulation is that they are ectothermic. They take on the temperature from the environment around them. And then the one that is probably new on this list is Osteichthyes, which is the class of all of the bony fish. Their body covering is that they have scales. Their reproductive system is that they lay eggs with soft shells, but they are externally fertilized because they lay eggs on the bottom of the river or the lake, and then the male fish come over and spawn in order to fertilize those eggs. And their temperature regulation is also ectothermic. They take on the temperature of their environment. So basically, we just took that big group of chordata, now we split it out again by things that we can observe in the animal, specifically body covering, reproductive system, and temperature regulation. Okay, so now that we are done with classes, under classes are orders and families. And orders and families get a little bit more confusing to talk about. They still break those classes into smaller groups with common characteristics, but there's no standard rule of thumb. Because, for example, the classes of mammals and birds or aves are so different, we use different features to break them into orders and family that are appropriate to birds versus mammals. So order and family breaks classes into small groups based on common characteristics, but they differ depending on the class that you're in because, bony fish and birds are real different and you need different classification features to break them down. Now, the next thing to talk about that can be a little bit confusing about order and family is how families get their names. So when you start looking at the classification of an animal, the family name and the genus name are going to sound and seem really familiar and very similar, and that's by design. The family name actually comes from the genus name, and all we do is we add a suffix to the end of the word. In animals, we add ide to the end. In plants, we add aca. So for example, if you were in the genus feline, you would add, or felis, you would just add felidae, and you would be in the family of cats. So the stem is added to the genus name, and that just helps as a standard practice and helps clarify the types of animals that we're talking about when we're looking at family. Okay, finally, speaking of genus, a genus is, we're getting to very specific groups here, and it refers to a group of closely related species. So the big 3 criteria for the genus is that the descendants are grouped together, so they should be in the same sort of general geographic regions. It should be a relatively compact group, so you shouldn't have hundreds of animals in these groups. It should be down to a pretty short list, and then there should be distinct features within the group. So the genus should still include a variety of animals that are compact, they are descendants that are grouped together, but there's still definite differences between the different animals within the genus. And then our final taxonomic rank is the species. So it's the most basic taxonomic rank, but what we mean by that is that it's the one that refers to a single group or the largest natural population that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Now, the species designation is a pretty clear concept. It's, like the difference between a giraffe and a zebra. They're 2 different species. But within a genus, sometimes species, they're a little bit of a gray area between them. So sometimes it can be difficult to determine exactly where the line is on species when you have genus groups that are really, really closely related. For example, let's look at the lion and the tiger. If you breed a lion with a tiger, you can sometimes, if you're lucky, produce a viable offspring called a liger. Now, though you can breed that lion and tiger and get a liger once, that liger, because the DNA doesn't combine properly between the lion and the tiger, That liger will be able to live its life, though it will have a shortened lifespan, and its reproductive systems won't work properly. So they can make eggs and sperm, but when the DNA actually gets reproduced and is split in half, because the DNA has to split into two sections to make a gamete, like a sperm or an egg, and that half DNA will be missing some of its coding. And so though we can make a liger with the complete DNA structures of the lion and the tiger, when the liger tries to breed, it has gaps in its DNA and it will never be able to produce fertile offspring. So it gets a little tricky because yes, we can breed a lion and a tiger, but their offspring of that breeding aren't fertile, so they're definitely two different species. But that can be confusing to folks unlike yourselves who aren't trained in animal science and know that difference. So the big thing with species is that it's basically one type of animal that we know can all interbreed. Um, and still produce that fertile offspring as we go forward. So now we've talked about all of the classification side of the science of taxonomy. Now we need to look at the naming side. Good news, the naming side is much simpler. So when we talk about naming an animal, the taxonomic system uses binomial nomenclature. Now all that means is binomial means two names, and nomenclature means how we name things. So when you see on a test down the road, what is binomial nomenclature? You say it's naming things, two names given as a name. So basically in the Linnaean classification system, we use the genus and species essentially as the animal's first and last name. The genus is their first name, the species is their last. Now, in order to make it clear around the world and really make it like stand out that we are using their scientific name, we also format this name differently when we type it. The genus is always the first word, and the first letter of the genus is always going to be capitalized. So essentially, we capitalize the animal's first name. But then the species is always the second word, and we do not capitalize the species. Capitalize the genus, lowercase species. And then whenever you write it, both words should be written in italics so that it sticks out. Now, this example is also bolded so that you guys can see it, but you should not write them in bold. You can bold them, but it's not like a standard part of the practice. So the three things that you do to make sure that it's a clear scientific name is you capitalize the genus, you leave the species in lowercase, and you italicize both words. Okay, so finally, let's look at an example of full taxonomy of the gray wolf. So the gray wolf is in the kingdom Animalia because it has animal cells and can move around its environment, and it ingests food to make energy. It's in the phylum Chordata because it is an animal with a vertebrate and an internal skeleton. It is in the class Mammalia, which means that it is an animal that is hairy, that gives live births and suckles its young. And then under Mammalia, one of the ways that we categorize animals into their orders is based on their teeth. So wolves are in the order Carnivora because they have carnivorous teeth. Then we are in the family Canidae, which is the dog family, which is named for the genus Canis of dogs. Next, we finally get down to the species level, which means we're talking about the gray wolf. Fun fact for you, the gray wolf is a different species than your dog. Your dog is Canis familiaris, where the gray wolf is Canis lupus. So this is the end of our notes today, but I do have one final thing at the end of this video in case you guys have about 10-15 minutes of class left. If you have only 7 or 8 minutes of class left, go ahead and clean up. There's not enough time to really get into it. But if you have a little bit more time, there is one extra little fun activity that you guys can do with the remaining time in class. Okay, so if you finish early, I want you to do a quick Google search of Journey 2050. Like you're going to take a journey to the year 2050. When you get to that Google search, follow the link to the website, scroll down a little bit, and click on the blue icon that says Go to Game. So I learned about this game in Texas. It's something we're going to be playing with some more next semester, and I think you guys all like it, and I just want you to play with it with a little bit of extra time. If it gives you a prompt to enter your name, school, just skip the teacher code box. You don't have to have that right now. Enter your name and school, and then play with the demo. We'll be talking more about it as we get into second semester. But if you have a few extra minutes, you guys have some time to play this approved game in class.